Today we're going to be using one of the fabulous new layering stencils die set embossing folder sets. So I thought we'd do a card today, and then on Monday we're going to be doing the wax one, this one, that was one of my samples for TV. So that's for Monday, and that is purely waxes, okay? But today we're doing something a bit prettier, okay? So we're going to be using the Dahlia and Roses. Those are what we're using. Obviously there's a die that comes with this, and we're using that as well. So those are those two. I'm also using the little circles stencil from this SLIMLINE Essentials set, which is out of stock at the moment, but I know it'll come back. I'm also using the new sentiment stamps that Lisa brought to you this week as well. I'm using the thank you, and I'm going to be using this little sentiment here, for your friendship. And then I'm also using the stitched bubble squares, and I'm actually using this first large plain edged stitched square. I'm not using the one with the bubbles on, just the plain square this morning. Okay, so I have already done some stenciling, and I have already prepped 2 sets of flowers, but I just wanted to run through this just to basically show you how quick it is really, and how few colours you need. So you can see at the top of my screen there the colours that I'm going to be using today. So we're going in with green first, and we're going in with bundled sage. And really I wanted to go through this. I know Lisa's done it on the TV, and you know it's so quick, and you can see how quick it is, because you know that time restraints on TV are quite tight. But for Lisa to go through all of the stencils with you on TV as a demo, I think that just proves to you how quickly these things come together. So this is my first layer, and before I take this layer off, I am going to go in and add a little bit of seedless preserves on the seed heads. Now that sounds a bit daft, but I think when you see the end bit you will realise why I did it. And there isn't very much ink on my brush here. I do love these little white stencil brushes. They're just so soft and so pliable. They just do exactly what you want them to do. Okay, so perhaps a little bit heavy there, but never mind. It won't matter when it's finally finished. So that's layer 1. Okay, and put that to one side. We'll go in with layer 2. And this is where I'm coming in with my saltwater taffy. I'm using my fabulous bijou brushes because they just give such a fantastic coverage. And you can see how quickly this is going on. I'm not really pressing on particularly hard, which just shows you what a beautiful coverage these brushes give. I always use oxides if I'm blending, because to me you get a better coverage with an oxide than you will with an ordinary distress ink. I'm not saying they won't blend, but it will take you an awful lot longer to blend your colours if you're just using the ordinary distress ink. Okay, this is going to be really, really quick. So we're going in now with number 3, and again I'm going in with exactly the same colour because I don't want too many different colours on here. Just going in with my saltwater taffy again, but I am going a little bit heavier this time because I want you to be able to see little veins on the flowers, which is where the stencil lines are obviously, but I don't want it to be too different. You know, when you get 2 colours, you sort of put like a picked raspberry onto a spun sugar, you will see a definite difference. I didn't want that for this card. I just wanted it all to sort of blend but still see the difference, which I think you can. You might not be able to see it on my camera, but trust me, there is a difference there, and it is just enough for what I want. Okay, so pop the top back on that and pop that back in its holder, and then we'll go in with number 4. And here I'm going in with my seedless preserves because I want these to really stand out on the flowers. If you see those centres, they are centres of the flowers, so I really wanted those to stand out quite a bit. I am going to go back in on that in a second, just to make the little flowers sort of stand out a little bit more. And I'm going to go in with warm lipstick, because to me that sort of comes from the same colour family. So there's the centres of my flowers, and then I'm going back in with number 5, the last one, with a darker green. Okay, now this is Mowed Lawn. No, it's not, it's Rustic Wilderness. Right, now before I take that off, we'll just take it off and show you the detail that's added onto those leaves. Okay, but before I take it off, I am going to go over the green with a little bit of seedless preserves, and this is really purely to just add a little bit of interest to the leaves. To me, I think it just lifts a card, just to add a little bit of different interest that, you know, nature doesn't do green leaves, does it? Green leaves have always got a little bit of colour from something else, and I just think this is where your own interpretation comes in, your own sort of feelings about how you want something to look. And like I said to you the other day, you'll never get two that look the same. They'll look similar because you're using similar colours, but they'll never actually look totally the same, because you'll use different pressures. You might put the ink in a slightly different place, so that they'll never really look exactly the same. I'm just going back over these little seed heads, adding quite a bit of depth to that colour there, and hopefully you'll see the difference when I hold it up afterwards, when I finish the whole thing. And you see how that little bit of colour, perhaps not put enough there to be honest, that little bit of colour has just added something to those leaves. That's better. You see what I mean? I just think it looks a little bit different and a little bit more special. So now I'm going back in with number 3, and I'm going to take my warm lipstick, and I'm going back into these petals here, these little flowers here, just in the middle where I went over with that seedless preserves, and hopefully this will just make those little flowers stand out a little bit. Oh yeah, much better. But you see how quick? I mean, we've been just over 5 minutes and we've virtually finished all our stenciling and our colouring, and just got a little bit more to add to these flowers. And then finally I'm going in with my seedless preserves again, and I'm coming off the centre of these stencil lines, just to add a little bit of interest and a little bit of like where shadow would probably fall on petals in nature, because obviously this flower is like this, isn't it? So there's going to be some shadow somewhere, and I've probably gone a little bit heavy there, but I don't think it will matter, because once you've embossed it, cut it out and embossed it, I really don't think it's going to make that much difference. I think if anything it will enhance it even more. So I'm just going to do the rose and come down off the, so that I'm coming down off the petals, if you like, onto the fullness of the petal. So I'm coming from the flower head, from the centre outwards, if you get me. And then this one here, exactly the same. And when I take this off, I think you'll see the difference. Okay, it's very mindful, this, so I do apologise if I'm a bit quiet. Perfect. See what I mean about the difference that makes? I am just going to add a little bit here, just to show the edge of those petals on top of the rose. I mean, you could spend ages colouring and adding little bits if you wanted to, but I don't think you need to. But obviously they're your designs, so you add or take away as much as you want. But for me, this piece of kit is a total game changer. I would not be without mine, gotta be honest. It never leaves my desk, ever. So I have already, as I said, done 2 of these already, okay? But I am going to finish this one off just in case I need any little bits from this set. So I'm just pop this through my die cutting machine, so bear with me 1 second. And how lovely does that look, even on its own, even without doing anything else? I think it's just beautiful. I've actually missed a bit here, so I think I might actually, just to show you that you don't really have to have your ultimate multi-tool, I'm going to reline this up over here, because I do want this the same colour as everything else. So it's this little bit here. See how quickly that lined up there? And I'm just going to add in a little bit of my seedless preserves, because I missed that little bit out. Yeah. See, so you don't have to have the tool, but I've got to be honest, the tool makes life so much easier. So now I'm going to pop this back in here, and that way around. Now normally what I do is I pop it in one way, fasten my folder. Now I can see that that's not quite lined up properly, so I'm going to flip it over so that my die cut is in the debossed side, and it will actually slot into place. You'll feel it slot into place because the embossing on these folders is so deep that this die cut will slot into that place really lovely. Now you see that's a much better fit. So I'm just going to whiz that through my machine. Don't forget to check your manufacturer's combos for 3D embossing folders, particularly Lisa's, because they are really deep, and the last thing you want to do is either break your folder or mess your machine up. And I will say, when you put these through your machine, just be careful of this edge, because the last thing you want to do is actually split this spine here, so just be careful. But I think you'll agree that once you've added the embossing, I mean, how beautiful does that look? And there are literally 5 colours on there, but I think that is just, the embossing adds so much to that design. Looks beautiful on its own, don't get me wrong, but if you add the embossing, it really makes a difference. And I'm just going to add this to a black outline so that I've got a little bit of drop shadow. I've just cut this out of black card, just ordinary plain, not too heavy, not too thin, black card. I'm just going to glue that down, and then while I'm doing everything else, this will have time to just grab Just wait for my fabulous Lisa Horton glue so that I don't have to use quite so much, because it has got a brilliant grab on it, this new glue that Lisa's brought out. I'm going to fiddle around with this a little bit, just so that I've got a little bit of drop shadow, but not a huge amount. It just gives that a little bit more interest. Okay, so I'll just leave that to one side. I might not use this because I might have enough with what I've already got, but I thought I'll show you how quick it is, how easy it is, and then if I need a little bit more, I've got a little bit more to be able to play with. Okay, so that's all my prep done, if you like. Now here's my base card. Now you can see that I've used the stencil that I showed you, this one, and again I've gone around the edge with saltwater taffy, and this is a fabulous repeating pattern, so it's so easy to get this to go all the way around your card and be able to line it up. And literally that is all I've done, and I've inked up my brush once, and all this is done with one inking of the brush. Just keep going over it till you've got the same sort of shading all the way around. And I've just moved this around like this all the way around the card. So easy to line up till I've filled all the way around the card. Now I know there's a bit of a line here where I've sort of gone over the edge of the stencil, like my brush has gone over the edge here, so I've got a harsh line, but you're not going to see that because I'm going to put something over the top of that. But it is just something to bear in mind. So if you're going to be doing a frame, perhaps tape your stencil down so that you won't end up with a line like that. Okay, so this is my square. Now I'm not going to stick this down yet, but what I did was worked out where I wanted my sentiment. Okay, so I wanted my thank you here, so I've stamped this before I put any glue pads on the any 3D pads on the back of that square. All right, so that I know that everything's going to be in the right place for when I've finished and for what I want to add on top. All right, so I'm not putting that down first, I'm going to put that down last. So I want this is going to frame my sentiment. I'll just leave this here while I'm lining everything up, you'll see what I mean. So this is going to sit on here, and I'm going to cut these leaves off because obviously they're over the thank you, so I don't want that. So I'm going to just snip those off there, like so. Won't matter that you can see a little bit of the leaf here. You just cut it so that you cut most of that leaf stem off. Nobody's going to really see it unless they sit and examine every little piece. So that's going to sit there, so you can see it's framing my phrase. And then this one is going to do exactly the same up here, like so. And I want to make sure that when I'm putting this down, that you can't see this frame underneath these flowers. All right, so it's about positioning these flowers so that it A, avoids this, and B, you can't see any of the frame. So again, I'm just going to snip off these leaves. Now I could have done all this and sort of got all this prepped, but I wanted to show you really how easy it is to just change up what you've got. Don't be afraid to cut into these and make them what you want them to be. There's no rule that says you've got to use absolutely every piece, is there? So I'll pop that around there, make sure I can't see my frame. Excuse me if you could see my head there, I do apologise. Okay, so those two pieces are going there. And when I've stuck these down, I'm actually going to trim them off. And what I trim off, I'm going to use in these corners. Okay, so I'm going to take that out of there, take my pads off here, I love these pads, they're so useful. I'm leaving all the little ones on for now because I'll work out which ones I don't need to leave on at the moment. So these are hanging off the edge, so I'm not going to take the pads off those yet. So I'm going to pop that on there like so. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the other edge. And then we're going to trim off. I know it sounds like sacrilege. When I was doing it, I thought people are going to have minor panic attacks when I start and cut things off. But I think it's worth it. So do I want that? I think like that. Okay, so that's all stuck down, and then what I'm going to do, you can see I've already put my pads on the back of here, which once I've cut these off I can take those off and I can put my square down. Just be mindful of how you're cutting these. Obviously you don't want to mess up what's on the front, but you do want them to sort of cut nicely so that you can still use the bits that you're cutting off on your other corners. Okay, I mean, I suppose I could have drawn lines where it came to and trimmed it, but I wanted to trim it in situ because I think it's safer to do that, because then you're not left with a piece that doesn't quite fit because you misjudged it. And the only problem is, of course, that my scissors stick to my pads, but it's not a huge problem. A little bit fiddly, but I think when you get to the end and you see the overall effect, I think it'll be worth it. Okay, so there's my flowers. Put it the right way up, don't it? Would help, wouldn't it? And now I'm going to stick this down. Okay, so just whiz my pads off here. Okay, so now I've got those in position, I can use my other bits in the corners. Now you can overlap these if you want, which is what I'm going to do. And you can see now why I said I wanted to do another one, just in case I hadn't got enough in the way of cut-offs from what I've already used. But I don't need much on this bit just to finish it off, so I might not use the other one. I might just save that and use that on a completely new project. I mean, you can add in more leaves if you want to. I might just use these leaves. And again, this is personal preference as well. You might want to leave those other two corners totally blank. It's entirely up to you. I just wanted there to be some interest in both corners rather than have two blank ones. So I'm not going to have to use the one I've just made, which is good because that means I've got a ready-made flower for another project. I'm going to leave it at that, I think, because I don't want to go too mad. But you can see how that has actually now framed my sentiment that I'm going to add in now here. And again, I don't mind if it goes over the top. I don't mind if it goes underneath. I think I prefer it over the top actually. And just add my sentiment in there, just to finish my card off. I'm quite pleased with that. What do you think? And I've got another set of flowers ready backed that I can use on another project later on today. But I'm really quite impressed with that. I think that looks really cool. You've used the whole thing but in a completely different way, and I just think it frames that sentiment really, really beautifully. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining me. It's so lovely to see so many people joining me on my lives. It's really quite gratifying, so thank you very much. I hope you can all join me on Monday when we'll be using the waxes with the same embossing folder. Have a fabulous weekend everybody, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye for now.